Hi, welcome to the English Breakthrough channel. If this is the first time you're tuning in and you find this video very interesting, there's lots more videos on my channel on subjects that are very related to what I'm talking about today. So be sure to click on the subscribe button and hit that bell to make sure you get all the updates. And if you like what you hear and watch, be sure to put your comments in the comment section. I really like to see what you think, and I like to get some comments so that I can produce better videos and videos that are more interesting for you. Today I'm talking about something I think that's going to be very interesting for you. It's about sleep learning. Now, I get a lot of questions from students about various ways of learning. And interestingly enough, I've been a student of learning, not just teaching, but learning. I've sort of been the guinea pig for the last 40, 50 years. It started when I was very young. When I was in junior high school, I was part of an experiment to learn French. Now, French is taught in most schools in Canada, but the government realized that no one learned how to speak French. So they bought a course from Encyclopedia Britannica. It was an audio-visual course in the 1960s. So this was films and big tapes. And my teacher, Mrs. Arnott, had to take special training to give us these lessons. So every week we had 2 sessions, and there was no workbook, as I remember. Basically, it was listening to tapes and watching films 2 times a week. And in 3 years, we were able to learn to speak French. And we really liked it. It was fun. It was kind of a very different method. But when I hit grade 10, senior high school, I went to another school. End of the experiment. No more oral French. Back to the old French. French grammar, vocabulary, drill, drill, drill. Usual kind of language learning where you don't learn to speak a language. You just learn everything but how to speak the language. And so I went from a 93 to like a 46. Terrible. So I didn't know what to do, but I didn't think I was a bad student. So that's when I decided to do my first experiment on myself. I created a sleep learning system. I bought a book called Sleep and Learn. And in the book it said you need to buy a special tape called an endless loop tape, and the tape will play over and over and over again for 6 minutes. Same material. And I bought myself a huge tape recorder. At that time, it was called a reel-to-reel tape recorder, a 5-inch reel-to-reel tape recorder, and a timer, and a pillow speaker. So I had this set up in my bedroom. An hour and a half before I went to bed, I would listen to the tape for 6 minutes, playing again and again and again. And then an hour before I woke up, the tape would come on again and play for another hour. My vocabulary improved. My grammar improved. I shouldn't say my grammar improved. My rules of grammar, the rules went into my brain. My French marks shot through the roof again. And my French teacher was very surprised that I made such progress in like 3 or 4 weeks. From the previous test, way down to way up. And it was because of sleep learning that helped me to do it. Later, I did a bit more research into sleep learning and found it really wasn't as effective as it was advertised. Around 1980, a new book came out. It was called, this is an old book of mine. I've had this since 1980. This was written by 2 Canadians, and they wrote this book about about super learning. And super learning was developed by Dr. Lazaroff. And in this method, you were able to learn things like vocabulary and grammar, things that you needed to memorize in your long-term memory very quickly. And this used a kind of music called Baroque music, called a largo. And it allowed you to bring your brain in tune with the music, and then the thing would just go sink into your brain very, very quickly. So this was a very, very effective thing. Back around 1982, before I moved to Macau, I actually was thinking, hey, wouldn't it be great if people could learn English vocabulary this way? They could really improve their English. And before I came to Macau, I actually had a plan to open super learning centers. That was my idea. But then I realized it was only good. The strongest point was it could improve your vocabulary. So you could retain a lot of words, but it didn't teach you a lot of other things like conversation skills, fluency, all those words and phrases. It only was good for vocabulary. So it limited what you could learn. So I kind of put this on the shelf and didn't think about it anymore. Later, as I became an English teacher, I heard about actually, when I first became an English teacher, I heard about a new approach that was developed in England in the 1990s. It's called the lexical approach. And the lexical approach is very scientific. It was developed by Collins Publishers in cooperation with the University of Birmingham. And what they did is they took books and newspapers and magazines, scanned them all and put them in a database, and then analyzed the database, and they found out what the most commonly used words in English were. And they did this every year, so there would be a new list coming out. This list was called Lexis, Lexis. And quite a few books came out, but it kind of was like a trend. Not many people really adopted it, but that the Bank of English, which they created, continues to be updated every year. So there's a new list of words that comes out every year, showing us what the most commonly used words are. So I put this kind of in the back of my brain, and now I'm using this to create new lesson plans, new materials for people to learn. One of the books that inspired me was a book, again, by an author who I respect very much. His name is Scott Thornsbury. He created a book called Natural Grammar. Natural Grammar uses the lexical approach to teach vocabulary. And I've used the exercises in this book with my students and found it very, very effective. So now, I don't advocate people using sleep learning. That's kind of out of date. So what I recommend now is super learning. Super learning is a much more effective way, but what I've done is even more interesting. So let me share with you a video of a new approach that I'm using, and well, just look at the video and you'll see what I mean. Beyond sleep learning. Sleep learning was developed in the 1960s by the Russian scientists. Now it's considered an old technology, has not had much research because the results weren't that outstanding compared to some of the newer technologies that we have in learning today. In every field of learning, including English learning, there are many, many breakthroughs that have been, there have been many breakthroughs. In English learning, there have been many new breakthrough technologies that have been used to improve learners' ability to both remember and retain things such as vocabulary. Two learning technologies that have been very useful for English learners. One is the lexical approach. The lexical approach uses something called a lexis. A lexis is a computer-generated database using information from magazines, newspapers, and books that have been scanned into a computer. In England, it's called the Bank of English, and it was Collins Publishers in cooperation with the University of Birmingham that did this first. So this lexis created helps learners learn because it's efficient and it saves you time. On the other hand, Suggestopedia uses a kind of music. It's very effective for long-term memory. So Lexis is very efficient because it teaches you the words you need to know. Suggestopedia is very effective because it helps put the words in your long-term memory. Suggestopedia uses a very special music in the background. It's called Baroque music, and the particular type of Baroque music is called a largo. Here's what it sounds like. Let me give you a little more background. The lexical approach, you learn the most commonly used words. Words that are based on frequency and usage. And this is the fastest way to learn, now this is the important part, useful vocabulary. So you're not learning words randomly, you're learning words that are used in the English language, because this is based on the lexis of commonly used words. Suggestopedia, on the other hand, helps retain facts and data, including things like vocabulary. It's brain friendly, stress free. You don't have to worry that you're going to pass the exam. There's no stress. You just listen casually, but with concentration, to the recordings. And most importantly, the vocabulary goes into your long-term memory. Wow, that's the biggest problem, long-term memory. So if you're just drilling words into yourself using rote memory, that doesn't work because it doesn't go into the long-term memory. Suggestopedia, vocabulary actually goes into the long-term vocabulary. So you take these two learning technologies, the lexical approach, which is efficient, Suggestopedia, which is effective. And what I've done is I've taken both technologies and I've created a system called Cyber Vocabulary. Now you get the best of both. So you can learn the most common words based on frequency and usage, the fastest way to learn useful vocabulary, which is the lexical approach. Combine that with Suggestopedia, which helps you retain vocabulary using brain-friendly, stress-free method that goes into your long-term memory. So this I call cyber vocabulary. Cyber vocabulary. It works. Short clips, 2 minutes long. 8 to 9 words in 2 minutes. Spaced repetition gives you the best effect. 10 to 12 listenings, and it goes into your long-term memory. 2 times a week for 1 week, that's 14 listenings. Just perfect. So what is the power of cyber vocabulary? In 1 year, you can learn 450 useful words that go into your long-term memory. Yes, in 1 year, you can learn 450 useful words in your long-term memory. Okay, so great. So welcome back. So now I want to explain a little bit more about the system. So as I said before, the cyber vocabulary is just one part of my new learning method, my new learning system, because you need more than just vocabulary. But you can do your vocabulary now very, very quickly using cyber vocabulary, 4 minutes a day. So you can always spare 4 minutes a day if you want to learn 450 words a year. But it's only part of the system. So if you want to get more information about both the cyber vocabulary and my new system, please go down below to the link and click and subscribe to my email newsletter, where I will give you 7 lessons on how I've developed all these new materials, this new system of learning that can really help you master English fluency. Oh, and one more surprise. I've created a link down below the other link, that will allow you to download one of my cyber vocabulary lessons. So I want you to download it, try it, and I'm sure it's going to work for you. Leave your comments below after you've listened for 2 or 3 days, okay? So really give it a try. I hope you enjoyed this. So this is much more interesting than just sleep learning.